Hello readers, I'm Amy and I'm your nonfiction feminist. Today I have moved into my dining room and put these lovely books on the top of the other bookshelf behind me. This is just like our cookbook, kitchen dining room bookshelf. I thought I would do something a little bit different today. So I've been planning on revisiting the haul of 2 seasons previously. So fall has started, I'm going to revisit my spring haul. In winter, I'll revisit my summer haul, so on and so on. This is just to see like what I've read, what I haven't read, books that I should really be concentrating on. This is kind of just me making sure that I'm actually reading what I buy and not wasting all of my money on books that sit on my shelves. I still have books on my TBR shelf from a year and a half ago when I went to a book sale, and I really want to kind of just cut down on that behavior, take some responsibility, especially because I am super low on money after all of my vacations this year. I also thought that I would, it's not like a game, I just thought that I would go ahead and pull the titles out of here, kind of go at random, because I thought that just sounded kind of fun. I have a piece of paper that I'm going to be keeping track here, and I will put my numbers up in the video whenever I do my edits. So let's get this started. This is my spring 2019 haul, as you may be able to tell from the title of this video. I will put the original haul down in the information section with like the link to the video and everything. I'm also going to have other links like the Stephen King Try a Chapter tag that I did. So we will get this started. This is a lovely gold colored plant pot that I got recently because I thought it was cute, and it's been sitting next to my shelves as some decoration. So what are we going to start with here? Erotic Stories for Punjabi Widows. I bought that at Barnes & Noble. I do not have it on my shelf because I'd been really excited for this book. Erotic Stories for Punjabi Widows. You have, in America, there's this collection of like Indian people, not Native American, but like Indian, like from India, just to clarify. And I don't remember what city they're in, but there's this woman who ends up teaching a writing class, and the people in her writing class end up writing erotic stories down. It was a whole thing. And it sounded like the kind of thing that I would love to read. And I started a month after I started reading that book. I wasn't even a third of the way through it. I don't know what it was. The story wasn't really getting along very quickly. I was kind of bored with the characters. I didn't really feel connected to the characters. If I remember correctly, there was also kind of a murder mystery incorporated in all of it, but the storylines didn't really relate to one another. The characters related to one another, but the whole thing just didn't feel connected, and I was just really bored, and I just did not look forward to reading that book. I actively avoided reading that book, which made me feel really bad because I was really looking forward to it. And eventually I had to admit to myself, I'm not going to read this. I should just put it down. And then I had it sitting on my shelf for a while thinking I should try it again. I should give it another go. It was a book I was really excited about. Finally, I did end up unhauling that book. I was not enjoying myself at all. So that is a really sad way to start off this video. What else do we have here? The Glass Castle. That was a movie, and I'm sorry if the camera's moving, my knees are bumping the underside of the table. Glass Castle was a movie and it helped me to realize, hey, there's this memoir that I would probably be interested that the movie was based off of. I am hoping to get to this for Nonfiction November, but there's a lot of books that I'm hoping to get to for Nonfiction November, so we'll see how that goes. I hear that this is similar to Educated. I'm kind of hoping it's better than Educated. I didn't understand the hype around it. That's another conversation to have on another day. But yes, The Glass Castle. I have not read it yet. I am planning on reading it in the next couple of months, hopefully, depending on if any surprise reading slumps decide to come up and get me. Next up, what do we have? The Collected Schizophrenias. This is another unhaul for me. The Collected Schizophrenias, I was thinking was going to be an essay collection about this woman's experience having schizophrenia and how she dealt with that. And that was some of it, but a lot of it was really just, here's what schizophrenia is, here's some research on schizophrenia. It just didn't have that personal touch that I think really can kind of make or break a memoir or essay collection. So it was not what I was thinking it was going to be. I hear a lot of good things about it, but I just didn't like it because it didn't have that personality to it. And ultimately I was just really disappointed by it. So that was definitely an unhaul. It is now living with a therapist friend of mine who I think could maybe get more out of it than I did. Delta of Venus. That is by Anais Nin. That's how I say her name. I have actually started this, but I am going to label it as unread because I only got 1 or 2 stories into it. This is basically a collection of erotic stories, and when I read the first one, with the stuff that went on in it, like, yeah, it was erotic, but it also had to do with, like, incest and this terrible main character. So I ended up Googling it to try and find out, like, what is up with this lady. And from what I remember, she had ended up being commissioned to write erotic stories for this specific person who just wanted, like, the really down and dirty stuff. And so she goes ahead and just writes these stories. And the couple that I read through, I'm like, this isn't, it's not that it's not good erotica, it was just problematic in a way that didn't make me feel good about reading it. I will probably still finish this at some point. It might just be like read a story every now and then sort of a thing. I don't know. Also, it's one of those nice modern classics editions, and I want to read it because it's beautiful, and I want to say that I actually read my modern classics. I don't want it to just sit on my shelf unread. That's why I unhaul things. But I don't want to unhaul my nice collector editions. So, what else do we have from our golden cup here? The Witches. This is not going well for me. This is a lot of unread and unhauled. The Witches is unread. This is a very chunky history book. If I don't count the notes, it's not too bad. It's over 400 pages, not quite 450. And it looks interesting. It is about the witch trials in Salem, which is a topic that I'm super interested in. This is another one. I actually started it at a certain point. I didn't get very far into it. I just got a couple pages into it, and it felt very dry. I have another book of hers on Cleopatra. I might actually try reading that one first because it's shorter. See how I get on with the writing style, and then decide if I want to dedicate myself to this 400 plus pager. So we'll see. I might not get to this year. Part of this unhaul revisit for me was, let's see what books I need to read by the end of the year. But in putting together this shelf, I'm like, there's no way that I'm getting through all of these books by the end of the year. Oh, and I should also say, with the video down below, I have not included all of my hauled videos, or I haven't included all of my hauled books in this video. I didn't include books that I'd read previously and then bought the book because I wanted my own copy. I didn't include any of my rereads. These are all books that I did not read before I bought them. So just to clarify that. So you're wondering, like, why isn't this book on here? So, Lolita. This is actually a book that I have read part of previously, but because I did not finish reading it, I went ahead and counted it in this. This is a book I've been looking forward to revisiting. We all know the story of Lolita, pedophilia, all that. I didn't love the writing style when I started it, but I've read enough books this year like, say, To Kill a Mockingbird, where I didn't enjoy it back in high school when I initially read it, but reading as an adult, I really appreciated it. Same thing with the writing style of Ira Levin. I didn't like the writing style of Stepford Wives when I read it back in high school, but recently I read Rosemary's Baby and I loved it. So this is going to be like revisiting it, seeing if I enjoy it more. And I also recently hauled Reading Lolita in Tehran. This is a memoir in books. This is a book I've been wanting to get my hands on for a while, and I would like to read these together. I would probably read Lolita first, so I can have a little more context for reading Lolita in Tehran. So this would actually be 2 books for me to end up reading. I am going to count it as unread because I never ended up finishing this book. All right. Saturday. This is why I'm doing this video. I need to take more responsibility for the books that I am buying. Saturday is by the lovely Ian McEwan. I watched and loved Atonement, and then I read Atonement, and I loved it even more. I read On Chesil Beach. Between the two, it might actually be my favorite, and a lot of that is simply because of the story. It takes place over a couple of days on a couple's, honeymoon. Saturday, I'm not actually sure what this is about. Neurosurgeon, deeply in love with his wife, minor traffic accident. I don't know. Another book that I started at one point, and I read a couple pages into it, and it looked good, but I think I was kind of in a slumpy mood, and this book just wasn't hitting the spot for me at that time. So, yeah, I've just read a couple of pages of this. It is still unread. I am looking forward to it. I love Ian McEwan so much as an author. His prose is, I don't want to say flowery. It's not at the level of what you would consider flowery, but he has a very, very nice kind of poetic prose that he tends to write in. I also read Nutshell. I didn't love that one. That one is a Hamlet retelling from the perspective of a fetus in utero. So the concept was really cool. It just wasn't my favorite of his books. It wasn't bad, it just wasn't my favorite. So I am looking forward to reading this. We'll probably not get to it this year. But again, this video is about me taking responsibility for myself and proving to myself that I don't need to buy more books. I say that as I'm about to, or by the time this video is up, have already uploaded an unhaul, or a haul. An unhaul, a haul. My language is getting very confused today. Beloved. That is a Toni Morrison book. It is the Toni Morrison that I am looking forward to reading the most. I just haven't had a chance to get to it yet. This one, I hear it gets pretty dark, but I also like pretty dark stories. I want to say 6 Toni Morrisons sitting on my shelf right now that I haven't read yet. I have read The Bluest Eye, which I loved. It was really short, which was nice. That was the first book of hers that I read. I absolutely loved it. I read Tar Baby, and I didn't like that one. I just didn't really understand what was going on in the story. So I'm not sure yet if she's going to be a hit or miss author for me or something in between, but I do think that I'm going to enjoy this book. Next up, Vile Bodies. Another one that I have started and not gotten to yet. Vile Bodies. This one I started reading one afternoon, didn't totally understand it, put it down. Again, I was kind of in a slumpy mood, jumping from book to book. It kind of gave me Great Gatsby vibes, where it's a bunch of fun-loving people with no responsibilities sort of a storyline. Yes, half the reason that I got this book was because of the cover. I also heard that Evelyn Waugh was a pretty big modern classics author. Haven't read him yet. So, and again, it was a nice collector's edition. I got a lot of these from Book Depository, where I went down this rabbit hole of, these are really pretty modern classics, I should buy that. We see how that's turned out already. Please be a red book. Please be a red book. No, it's not a red book. Wow, I need to start taking more responsibility for myself. Orlando by Virginia Woolf. I do feel kind of bad. Being a feminist, I hear a lot about women and feminists just being absolutely in love with Virginia Woolf. She's supposed to be like this great female author. I started and did not finish Mrs. Dalloway. I hated it. It was stream of consciousness writing, and I hated it. That's all I really have to say about Mrs. Dalloway. So I am nervous about starting Orlando because I've seen the movie and I think the concept is really cool. You have this male, way back in history, who's like blessed by the Queen of England or something, and turns into a female one day and lives for like years and years and years and years, like a couple of 100 years. The concept sounds really cool, but I'm nervous about this being similar where it's stream of consciousness, because in all of this like just great stuff that I'd heard about Virginia Woolf, no one had ever stated that she was a stream of consciousness writer. And if you know my channel, you know that I am very much a writing style reader. Like, I love epistolary novels, books that are written in journals and diaries. I really love that style. I don't like stream of consciousness style. I don't read a lot of young adult because I just don't think that most young adult books really have the writing that I like. I'm really dependent on writing style to enjoy my books. So I'm nervous about reading this because I'm afraid I won't like it, but I also really want to read it because of the concept. It's just a book I'm nervous for. I don't know if I'm going to get to it this year or if I'm going to keep holding off. I don't know. But I feel bad not liking Virginia Woolf because everyone talks about how great she is. I don't get it, but I've also only started and not finished one of her books, so we'll have to see. Red book, red book, red book. Yes, a red book. A book that I have read. There we go. All right, Dolores Claiborne. So down below, my Stephen King Try a Chapter tag will be linked. I read a bunch of my hauled Stephen King books, or really Chris's hauled Stephen King books. Chris is my husband. He had a huge Stephen King collection, so I started buying more Stephen King because I was kind of interested, and I'm a collector, and I wanted to expand his collection, so it's turned into a thing. But Dolores Claiborne, I have actually read this. This was one of the books in my Stephen King Try a Chapter tag. It's not the one that I ended up reading for that, but I did end up reading it eventually. This wasn't what I expected from him. He is stereotypically a horror author. That said, I don't think that people often talk about the fact that Stephen King is not specifically a horror author. Yes, his most famous stuff is horror, but he also writes fantasy, he writes drama, he writes westerns, he does a little bit of sci-fi. He's a very diverse author in his writing and his topics. And Dolores Claiborne was kind of a horrific drama, not really a murder mystery necessarily, like kind of, but there's not necessarily a lot of mystery to it. Anyways, this whole thing is actually written as a monologue. There are no chapters, there aren't any page breaks. It's all Dolores Claiborne talking to, I think it's like a policeman and a stenographer or something who's taking down her story. And it was a good story, but I did read the movie after. I read the movie, guys. I read the movie. I watched the movie after reading this book, and honestly, I liked the movie better. For one thing, Kathy Bates is amazing as an actress, and she's amazing in the movies that she does. And I don't read a lot of... I guess I do read a lot of drama. I don't know. I guess I'm back and forth on drama-specific books, maybe. I don't know. And it was a good book. It was a good story, but I just felt that the story fit the screen better as far as telling the story. It is definitely worth a read. It's one of his earlier, less discussed books, but it definitely wasn't one of my favorite of his. And like I said, I liked the movie better. The movie that I read. What else? What else have I failed with this haul? A Vindication of the Rights of Women. Did I even put that on? Yes, I did put that on here. As of this filming, today is Thursday that I'm filming this. Thursday the 5th? I think. I haven't actually looked at the date yet. And I just started reading this yesterday. I have been wanting to read this for a while. Vindication of the Rights of Women, NonFictionFeminist. Do I need to say more? I skipped the introduction to it and started reading the letter to a bishop that kind of opens this whole thing. And glancing through the introduction, I might read it before I get to the rest of this, or I might go ahead and read a couple parts of this and then get back to the introduction, because I think the introduction will help me understand this a little better. This is going to take me a while to read. It reminds me of the stuff that I read in college, where it's classic, it's nonfiction, it's got language that I am not used to, like older language. I think it's just going to take me a while. It's going to be one where I read a chapter here and there. I'm definitely going to be writing in this book and annotating in it. It's going to drive my husband nuts, but I think it's what I need to do. I understand that that's what notebooks are made for, to make notes on books, but this is one where like I want my notes in the text to just, I feel like it's going to help guide me along. Or if I want to flip back, I can be like, what was it that she was saying here? Oh, such and such a thing. So this is going to take me a while. I'm going to go ahead and put this under unread because I haven't actually read it yet, and even though I'm currently reading it, it's going to take me a while. What do we have here? Carmilla! That is another read book. I was watching... Is it Lucy the Reader? Is her name? She does a lot of classics. Classic and young adult is kind of her thing. I love her classics videos. And she was talking about Carmilla. So Dracula is the classic vampire story. It's the classic about vampires that you really hear about. Carmilla, I'd never heard of. This is also a vampire story. It's a vampire novella classic, and it is actually older than Dracula, which is interesting for several reasons. For one thing, I'd never heard of it, and it's even more, it's older than Dracula. It is a classic vampire novel. You'd think I would have heard of this. But also, considering the fact that it's older, it's definitely got some lesbian vibes. Like, I mean, I guess that's kind of the thing with vampire novels. They usually suck your blood, and a lot of times you hear about them sucking the blood from the neck, and that kind of makes it erotic. But it really kind of focuses on the erotic parts of it, and it's written by J. Sheridan LaFanu. I don't know anything about this person. I'm assuming it's male. A lot of writers were male in those times. A lot of known authors were male at those times. But I don't know. It's got some lesbian vibes. It was very interesting. It was good. It was short. I didn't like it as much as I liked Dracula, but I did enjoy reading it. What else do we got here? The Tenant of Wildfell Hall. Feeling slightly better about myself now that we're getting to books that I have read. And now I'm not feeling good about myself, because I spilled something on this cover. I tried to get it off. It ruined the cover. That made me sad. Tenant of Wildfell Hall is the second Anne Bronte book that I read. I am working my way through the Bronte, starting with Anne, then I will go to Charlotte Bronte, and then I will go to Emily, because I also hear Wuthering Heights is the most difficult of the books to read. So, second one that I've read. It was a little slow, but I did enjoy it. There is not a single male character in this book that I like. I was discussing this with a friend of mine on Instagram, and we were talking about all the different kinds of bros that are in this book, and just like how horrible they are. And it was just awesome. Anne Bronte is seriously underappreciated as a Bronte. Like, I think she's great. I haven't read the other two yet, but I think Anne Bronte's great and needs to get more appreciation as an author. Just, you have all these horrible men doing all of these stupid things and being their bro selves, and it's like, how many of these men, these types of men, have you dated? This is not an I hate men rant. I am married to a man. I love several men in my life. I'm not going to say that all men are horrible. All the men in this book are horrible, and I've met some very horrible men, but just a note here, I am not a man-hating feminist, despite the trollish comments that I get. And delete, because I don't need that kind of negativity in my life. The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. That I have unhauled. I did read it. I joined Nicole at A Beautiful Chaos of Books for her mental health-a-thon back in May. This was like the second month that I'd been doing BookTube. And Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime has an autistic main character whose neighbor's dog has mysteriously died, and he's trying to figure out who done it. It was a good book, but I didn't love it. It was a very well-written book. It was very well done. It wasn't, for one thing, it wasn't what I expected it to be. Rather than being more of a murder mystery, it actually ended up being a family drama. And I didn't love the voice. So it's all from the perspective of the autistic main character. While that was very well done, that just wasn't a voice that I particularly enjoyed reading. You know what I mean? Like, just the way that someone thinks or talks, or the way a character thinks or talks, isn't necessarily something that you like reading, whether or not you enjoy the story. So I did end up unhauling that. It is now in one of the lodges with one set of kids or another that I work with, and I think they're really going to enjoy it. If you don't know already, because I am getting a lot of new viewers lately, I work at a treatment center for mentally ill kids, mainly mentally ill teenagers from like generally the ages of 12 to 17. I think they're going to get more out of the book than I will. So, yes, unhauled that book to them. What else do we have here? This is a much longer video than I thought it would be. The Book of Flora. I am going to link my review down below of the whole Road to Nowhere series. Basically, the Road to Nowhere series is a queer dystopia. A very, very queer dystopia. It is great. The Book of Flora is the third book. That's all I'm going to say because there is a lot to say on these books. So if you want to know more, please just follow the link down below and I will tell you everything. Next we have... Oh, I should also mark that it's red. Gotta keep up with this. Rose Madder. That is a red book. This is the one that I ended up choosing from my Stephen King Try a Chapter tag, and I hated it. It had the best opening chapter, which is the reason why I went with this book. It starts off with a bang. You have a woman who is physically abused by her husband and miscarries the baby that she's pregnant with. That's quite a strong way to start out a book. I was intrigued. I read it. I didn't like it. You have kind of a sort of light fantasy storyline, and you have the main storyline. It's like he took the main storyline and he cracked it open in parts and just shoved some fantasy in there, so it didn't really feel like the stories were connected. We do hear about the husband's background, which gives some explanation for why he is the way he is, but we are told the background rather than feeling the background. So it mainly felt like the husband was abusive and very psychotic for no particular reason. I like some reason behind my villains, and I don't think that this was a very good villain. I don't think it was a very well put together story. I think it really could have been something, but it wasn't. Okay. Sparrow. This was another book that I read for the Mental Health-a-thon. I will link my review down below. This was advertised as a young adult, but in talking with Nicole and like reading some of the Twitter conversation that we were all having, it was really more of a middle grade than a young adult. That said, I did enjoy it. You have a little black girl who is depressed and ends up finding a black therapist who she really like connects with, and it takes a while for her to open up. You're kind of frustrated throughout the story because it's like, say something, explain what you're feeling. And at school, she'd been sitting on the roof or standing on the roof, and everyone thought she was trying to commit suicide, and you find out why she was standing on that roof. It's really great. It was a very enjoyable book. That is another one that I did unhaul to the kids on campus at the treatment center that I work with, because again, I think they're really going to enjoy that book, and I probably wouldn't reread it as much as I enjoyed it. Next, we have Book of 1,000 Days, which is also a middle grade book, but I actually really enjoyed this. I'd always remembered starting this back in middle school, and while it was really interesting, I could not remember if I'd finished it. And in reading this, which I did find at a used book sale, I realized, hey, I never did finish this. And I really enjoyed it. The writing was better than I would expect from a middle grade. Not that writing in young adult and middle grade is bad, it's just not at the level that I like to read from. But I did enjoy myself. You have a kind of maid for an important royal person. Both of them are trapped in a tower because the royal refused to marry a man that she didn't want to marry. And, like, how are they surviving while they are in this tower? What are they doing to get by day? It was really good. It's got all these really strong women characters. I really enjoyed it. Next up, I think we only have a couple more, so hopefully this won't be too much longer. 5 Patients. I love Michael Crichton. He was my main man in high school and college. 5 Patients is actually a small nonfiction that he wrote, because I believe he did have a medical degree, or a science degree of some sort. And he basically writes about 5 patients in a study that was conducted. This is probably one that I will get to in Nonfiction November because it is so small. It's not even 200 pages. And it's Michael Crichton, so I want to read it as soon as possible. Animal Farm by George Orwell. I have started 1984 a couple of times, and I get really bored, and I don't know what's going on, and I don't care, and I don't want to read it. Animal Farm is a short novella, I think you would call it, and I really enjoyed this. You have people who are in charge of a farm, and the animals don't like it, so they decide to take over, and chaos ensues. There are a lot of messages in this book. I don't understand any of them because I did not study it in college, and this is not the channel for finding out all of the hidden messages in Animal Farm. But he was making a point about communism or something. It was a good story. I enjoyed it. I'm just not the person to talk about the heavy political effect that was this novel, I guess. And Thinner. I actually just had a friend come over last night and tell me that she loved this book. This was another one from my Stephen King Try a Chapter tag. A man is overweight. He does something horrible to a gypsy woman and is kind of cursed. So what I think ends up happening in this is that the man is losing weight, not from his figure, but he's just losing weight. Like, he steps on the scale and he looks the same, but he's lighter. And it sounds really interesting. My friend said she loved this. I don't know if this is one that I'm really going to get to this year, but I am hoping to read it eventually. It sounds like a really good Stephen King. And this is one of his writing as Richard Bachman books, which I have not read any of his Richard Bachman ghost-written books yet, so we'll see how that goes. Lilac Girls. This one I've seen around a lot. Interestingly enough, I'm seeing this cover around a lot. You walk into Barnes & Noble and you see like 15 books with almost this same identical cover. Kind of annoying. Book cover designers need to get more creative, seriously. But this is a World War II fiction. I really like World War II. I mean, I didn't like it. I wasn't there for one thing, and it was a terrible thing that happened. But I like the fiction and the nonfiction about World War II. I find it really interesting. And I have not gotten to this yet. I was going to read it during the reading rush because it was purple and you needed a book with purple on the cover. But it was huge. I was trying to look for something a little bit shorter, which I didn't end up reading that book anyways. Yes, I don't know when I will get to this, but hopefully I will get to it eventually. Next is The Dark Crystal. So, I did not actually watch The Dark Crystal until earlier this year, and I actually ended up loving it. I don't think that I am ready to watch the new Netflix series yet. I think I need to revisit the movie. But this is just a little copy of The Dark Crystal that I found at the Friends of the Library. And The Dark Crystal was not based on a book. This is a book based on the movie, which is not something that you end up seeing a lot. So that's interesting. And I haven't read any novelizations of movies yet, so we'll see what I think of that. I think it'll be fun. It has pictures from the original movie, you know. Now, the last one, Don't Look Now and Other Stories. That is a Daphne Du Maurier. I love Daphne Du Maurier. I have actually read this book. It was the first complete set of short stories where I enjoyed the whole thing. I'm not usually a short story person. I like short stories every now and then, like here and there I'll read a short story and enjoy it, but short story collections generally are really inconsistent from story to story, and I really liked this. Daphne Du Maurier is definitely a slow burn. These are fairly lengthy short stories, and I'm not usually a slow burn person, but she does her thrilling stuff just right, and I love it. So that is it for this video. I will put my numbers on the screen whenever I edit this, so, because I might have lost track on here, so I don't really know what my exact count is, but so far, I'm not doing too hot. It looks like I almost have the same amount of read as unread, which is good, but clearly still have a long way to go. So that is it for this haul revisit. I hope you enjoyed this. Please like, subscribe, be my friend for more fun book content, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!